Hello, everybody. My guest today is John Cesar. He is a friend of mine. He is a social media mogul. He is a billionaire, a self-made billionaire. He's a classical guitar player, and he's a jokester. Hi, John.
Hey Ben, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Word, cool.
So
Um,
you're not any of those things. Other well, no, you're some of those things. You're kind of
some
a
of those things. I mean, definitely not a billionaire in terms of money. Definitely
yeah.
not.
In
But I don't
terms
know
of
many
love.
people who are in terms of love, in terms of maybe in fun and good spirits. Hopefully, maybe. But yeah, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for asking me to do this.
Yeah. Thank you for being one of the pioneers of this project. We're just quarantined, and I want to talk to my friends and put it on the internet. I got a phone call about
Mhm.
another episode I did from my mother saying that it was very good. So
Awesome.
I'm sure my mother will like you too.
Very cool. Yeah, I caught some of the one with your friend from Nashville.
Yeah.
Very cool. And definitely very interesting. Totally seeing. I guess as classical guitarists, we get so into like kind of our own world of like you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and oftentimes we forget that for many musicians, honestly, if not most of them, it's not really a clear path. It's kind of like, well, I'm here, but now what? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It can be anything.
We have a very clear path, and that path is you can deviate from that path, but you kind of know what you want to do, right? You either
Mhm.
want to perform or you want to teach or you want to record. But you're
Yeah.
right, as other types of musicians, you kind of have to figure out how you're going to make a living. And like Ben Bishop was saying
Mhm.
in the first episode, um, he just had to figure this out and talk to this person and talk to this person and network and communication, which is something you're really good at. You're really good at communication. So I want to talk about kind of like your big picture and your big story. But right now, yeah, well, let's just jump into it. Well,
Cool. Okay.
before we get to all the cool stuff you're doing now, I don't even think I know the answers to these questions. How long have you been playing guitar in general?
So I am 26 now, and I started playing electric guitar, like many people do, many classical guitarists do. That is, maybe when I was like 13 in seventh grade. Um, and I did that for a few years. I took that fairly seriously. I was like very rigorous with it. I'm sure as many people were once they find that that's the thing they want to do. So even in middle school, I was trying to practice like 2 or 3 hours every day. I would just go home from school, do whatever homework I had to do, and then sit down on my guitar and just pick out solos, pick out songs, and practice. And then I started playing the classical guitar maybe going into my junior year of high school. So when I was probably about 16 going 17 by then. Um, and the reason why I did that was because um, pretty much by eighth grade, I knew I wanted to do something with music as a career. I knew I wanted to major in music. I didn't know what that meant, but I just knew I wanted to do that. And my teacher, by the time I got to sophomore year, my guitar teacher, by the time I got to sophomore year, was pretty much like, well, if you want to major in music for guitar, you have to either study classical or jazz. And then he said, well, I don't teach jazz, so if you want to study jazz, you have to find a different teacher. But I did do an undergrad in classical guitar, um, part of my music ed degree. And I'm like, oh well, I guess I'll do classical guitar. That sounds interesting.
So you
So
stayed with that teacher.
yeah, so I stayed with that teacher.
Beautiful teacher tactic, by the way, for him to just say, you could ruin this relationship
Yeah,
and play stinky jazz.
yeah.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but and funny enough, actually, I mean, I'm obviously not going to say who the teacher is, but actually, his view on jazz actually kind of was he kind of didn't look down upon it. It's like he just didn't see the point in it, as mostly his background was as like a rock, and like blues kind of guitarist who had some.
Which is basically like linked to jazz in a very intimate way,
It,
blues.
it it is definitely, ironically enough, it really is the lineage really is blues jazz, then blues jazz. It kind of then they kind of deviated to become their own thing. So. So I mean, yes, yes, totally a great teacher tactic. I mean, I definitely had a great connection with him. I felt like I was learning a lot while working with that teacher. So I didn't really want to change. And at the same time, too, I was very involved by, I think, freshman year of high school. Halfway through, I decided I wanted to play in band. Like I was determined to do as many musical things as possible, whether it was chorus, band, select choir, wind ensemble. And I didn't play a band instrument, so I didn't know. So how I learned how to read sheet music actually wasn't through classical guitar. It was ask my parents to go to the music store and rent a saxophone for me, and then just show them to band class, be like, "Hey, look, I don't know how to play, but I'm pretty good at guitar, and I think I can get good. I think I can get good enough to play with the parts here. Let me in the band." And
I was gonna guess snare drum because a lot of times with the kids that don't know
oh,
anything, you go, "You're going to the snare drum."
yeah,
But you
well,
played the saxophone. That's cool.
yeah, I mean, it was really fun. I mean, I think that was really what forced me because it was almost every day that I had to sit down with an instrument and look at sheet music and be like, well, okay, how do I do that? Oh, that note's this, okay. And then part of my practice then became literally was going home and going on musictheory.net and and just doing like the note trainer and
Yeah.
trying to find
Yeah.
different notes. And then I was like, well, now I need to get good at this at guitar. But by then I could kind of read sheet music. I could read it fairly well, not polyphonic sheet music the way the guitar music is, but I could read like one note at a time. And I also knew how to play the guitar fairly well. I knew chord shapes. I knew where the notes were. I had a basic understanding of, I guess, of the chromatic scale.
Yeah.
And one thing I tell my students is that's very important. Just to understand how the guitar works.
Right.
Um, so by the time I started actually playing classical guitar, seriously, I already had those things under my belt. So it wasn't crazy difficult for me to go from electric guitar to suddenly learning things through sheet music.
Isn't that interesting? When you were saying that, I had like that flashback to being. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
I'm a little bit older than you, but not too much older.
Yeah.
I feel like um, when we were figuring out a lot of electric guitar things, we had to just sort of go online and just like watch a video. I remember like I downloaded, and I probably like metaphorically wore the grooves out of this thing,
Mhm.
which of course is impossible on a computer. But I
Yeah.
downloaded this live video of Clapton playing Layla, and now
Mhm.
it's on YouTube. But it was on like Kazaa or LimeWire or something. And I just watched it so many times to figure out exactly what he was doing, and like that's like the easy part, right? Because I like pirated a
Yeah.
video, like, and but what it made me think is like we had to do so many things to try to teach ourselves the sort of this really looked down this really it wasn't necessarily looked down upon, but it was really this unprestigious instrument.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to when people ever ask because so one of the things I do on my page is I do compare classical guitar to the electric guitar community in a way, and I'll get more into why I do that later. But like one of the things I definitely get I intentionally stir up heat about, but also I get a lot of heat about is the kind of sheet music versus tabs, guitar tablature that is, and one of my main thoughts on guitar tablature is really there's nothing wrong with it honestly, but my main thought on it really is. Well, the people that we idolize so much, whether it's John Petrucci slash Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, were those guys using tab when they were learning? Probably not. So why do we feel like we have to? Why not just do it by ear like they did? You know what I
Right.
mean? We
Yeah,
want to be like them, so why not
absolutely.
try to be like them? Um, but yeah, no, I think back to what you said though. It's totally interesting to kind of see like how when we were younger we had way less than what people nowadays have. Like now, if you wanted to learn the Layla solo, you could look up. And I do this with some of my electric students still. Is I'm like, well, let's go see if we can find 5 covers of that solo and see
Yeah,
what they're doing. You know what I mean? And then you can slow stuff down on YouTube now.
yeah.
There's tons of tabs out there, even if they're not wrong. They're usually pretty close, honestly. Like they're never off by like they might be missing a note here or there.
Did
Um,
you ever use that software Power Tab?
Ironically, I did actually. I think I didn't use that one. I used one that
Guitar
was
Pro?
no. I used one that was very similar. It was like a free version, but it was able
No,
to open.
Power Tab was free.
Oh, then maybe.
I have a whole. I remember they were upset. It was like because you could find those Guitar Pro and Power Tab um, files on like
Yeah.
Guitar 911 or Ultimate
Hmm.
Guitar. And then I remember at one point they were like, "We're getting rid of Power Tab. It's illegal. They're
Yeah.
copyright infringement." And I have a zip like folder, like a two
Yeah.
gigabyte zip folder on my drive right now from when I was 16 of like every guitar Power Tab song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember just like going through that and learning like really difficult music like Steely Dan and Dream Theater and all this really eclectic stuff. But that was the way to do it at the time was to use that software. Now they have like Muse Score and I think there's another thing that you can, like Guitar Pro on your phone, or
Mhm,
Ultimate Guitar has an app where you can just watch whatever. So you're a teenager, you're playing electric guitar,
mhm.
and so you you pick up the saxophone, they put you in band, you decide that you want to do something with music. When do you go from uh I might want to be a rock star, I might want when did you find your focus? Was it your undergrad or was it before then?
That's a great question, honestly. I think I would say even there's even points where I still don't know. I guess one thing is where myself is I've kind of kept like one foot in the door, in that like rock scene, and not so much in myself in terms of playing, even playing the electric guitar. I mean, I'll pick it up here and there, but I don't really have the time now to do it. I'm sure, as you know. Um, and it's nothing against it, obviously. It really comes down to a time thing. But what I mean by like one foot in the door, so I have a very close friend. He's done a few live streams with me on my own page. And he was in a band that was signed by Epitaph Records, who's the same label that owns like bands like The Wonder Years, Green Day at one point, A Day to Remember, like a bunch of like punk rock, or semi-hardcore bands.
I think they
And
do. Keep going. I think I know some bands that are.
Um, and they were doing really well. They were open. They did a few concerts where they opened for the Wonder Years. They opened for the Menzingers, and he was really involved in that. And then basically was, and me and him kind of lost touch. But once we sorry, me and him kind of lost touch for a few years. But maybe in the last 3 years, we kind of regained our friendship, I guess, of what it was of being like kids that both loved playing guitar. And even now, I talked to him today because he just released a new single of his new band, and there's so many times where he's like, "Oh, if we have a show, you got to come and like just play guitar for this thing." Or, "Oh, you got to come and even just hit down some chords on a synth for one of our sets." And part of it is tempting just because he already has that in there. I mean, I know those shows are gonna be definitely more fun than just joining your local band and playing the Webster Hall to like 10 people. You know what I mean? It's gonna be
I'll tell you my Webster Hall
the
story.
the Webster Underground, that is.
Oh, I played the big room.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
It was not. Well, that's a story for later.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did you do as you were sort of leaving high school?
So as I was leaving high school, I think one thing that happened to me is I actually, even going into early college, I think maybe many people face the same dilemma. Is I was like, well, I can still do this, and I want to get better at this, but I also want to get better at this. So in early college, I was trying to play electric, still playing in a band, still doing all that stuff, while studying classical guitar, and that definitely got in the way. I would say of that. Definitely, I would say dented my progress, at least in terms of that at that point. Um,
Where was your undergrad?
so my undergrad was from a state school in New Jersey, Montclair State University.
And who was your classical guitar teacher? Can you share that?
Yeah, so while I was there, I worked mostly with the teacher Seth Hemmelhoek, who's a great teacher. And I honestly definitely would not have the opinions and the understanding, and more so, I guess, the connection of joy to the classical guitar if it weren't for him. And the one story I tell everyone is, and like I said, I feel like many people experience the same thing. Is like, and I'm sure you did. When you go into college, especially if you're to a state school for classical guitar, and you're decent, you can actually play a few pieces.
Right.
You probably feel like the big dog there in terms of your guitar skill. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like I thought, like wow, I'm playing some of these simple Bach preludes. I'm playing this. I'm playing these Renaissance pieces, and everyone else here can't even do the Segovia scales. Like I knew most of them at the time, and I played these like very hard pieces. Well, not very hard, but pieces that at the time were way beyond what I was doing then for
Right.
Seth. And the first thing Seth said was like, "Oh well, that was nice. Let's do some Brouwer studies though." And we did Brouwer 1 and 4,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Absolutely.
and and then like I played them, and like I think I worked with them a week, and I'm like, oh Seth, can we do this now? I can play the Brouwer studies. And he's like, well, let's hear them. And I played them. He's like, well, no, now you have to play them the way I want you to play them. So then that was really where I think my eyes were open. Like, I'm really not that good at this thing, and I really want
Right.
to get better at this thing.
I feel like that statement, I don't want to hang on that statement
Yeah,
forever,
yeah,
but that statement of no, now you got to play them the way that I want you to play them
yeah.
is such that, like, if you're not a musician, if you haven't had that specific relationship with a teacher or with like a particular curriculum, like I can think of a couple jazz people that would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And I think, like, in general, that statement that you made is so uh it's such an idiom of classical music, and it's like I can imagine a non-musician hearing that and being like, what are these guys are terrible. Do, Are they,
Yeah.
do they exist to just strangle creativity? But no, you're right. You have to learn, well, just because you can read a sentence in another language doesn't mean that you really understand that sentence or that book or that phrase or whatever. You can say the words, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So you're an undergrad. Let's skip ahead a little bit because
Okay, yeah.
I want to move toward the present day.
Okay, okay.
So you're in undergrad, and what was the degree in?
So my undergrad was actually also in the same as my master's, which we'll get to, in classical guitar performance. And I think it was maybe around my sophomore year of my undergrad where I was like, you know what, let me put the electric guitar in the case, put it away, and really focus on this classical thing. Because then, like, once I was making my teacher happy, I was like, and I started like maybe more real pieces like Villalobos Prelude One. I was like, you know what, I can really do this. And then we had like a guitar day thing, and the teacher was like, hey, John, I think you would be, since you're one of the few performance majors here, I really want you to play in the master class for the guitar day thing. Um,
Mm.
and that was like a great experience as well. I
Who
mean,
was the teacher for the master
so
class?
the teacher for that master class was the guitarist Jorge Caballero. So. And that was that
That's
was
one hell of a
So it was my
of a
first real master class,
yeah.
and and I played Prelude One,
Yeah.
um, and I guess since then that's kind of where things started going. I'm sure as you know, as I kept going more into it, I kept seeing there was more and more that I didn't know,
Yeah.
and it was like kind of that curiosity of like, oh well, like I thought I played this piece well, and Jorge gave me like, oh, refinger this, make sure you're slowing down more here, make sure you don't pop the chords here, and I was like, huh, well I gotta go do this more then, and then I think it was good, and then Seth would be like, oh well, no, you're doing that, but now you make sure you're doing this because that wasn't obvious, and then it was this whole cycle. I think that was what really intrigued me about classical guitar and playing classical music versus playing rock music was there was always that like digging a little deeper within one thing. So
I'm gonna butcher a quote here.
yeah,
There is so I also, well, before the world shut down, I
yep,
was studying jujitsu a little bit, and
yep,
I got pretty far with it. Not pretty far, but I did it for a little bit and was pretty into it within my rank of white belt. And one of the things that I started doing was listening to these podcasts. And there's this guy, Croyler Gracie, who's a young guy. He's actually a year younger than me. And he's part of this big, dynasty of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners who are like the best in the world. And the whole idea of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or of Jiu-Jitsu in general is that you're doing stuff on the ground.
yeah,
And people think that if they go in there and they muscle their way through things through the ground, or they use a lot of strength, that they're going to be a good fighter. But that's not what it is. It's not a striking, for the most part, it's not about striking.
mhm,
And so he said, when you get somebody, it's a very intimidating thing. And this is why I think it's connected to classical guitar.
mhm,
He said, it's very intimidating because you get somebody in there and they, their mind is blown that you could do stuff on the ground. It's like somebody having never understood the concept of a large body of water, and then you bring them to the beach and show them the ocean,
yeah,
and then while they're there, people are swimming in the ocean. So to me, that quote hit home for classical guitar too, because you play the notes, right? Oh,
yeah,
I played the notes. Didn't I play the piece? No, no, you didn't play the piece.
yeah.
Okay. Well, oh, I got to play this note loud and this note quiet. Didn't I play the piece? No, you didn't play the piece. And so it's not this thing where you're going, for me, you're
Yeah.
going further, but you're going deeper. Would you agree with that?
I think so totally. And I think that's one thing that kind of to segue back to even what we were talking about with teaching, or when people realize that is, I think that's one thing that's very important for teachers to definitely instill in their students at a very early stage. Not that they're going to tell them all the stuff that they maybe can't understand at the time, but let them always know there's more to it than is on the page or that they're starting off with. Um, and I think that when that's done well, that's when the student can have that sense of discovery. And I think I was lucky enough to have that in my rock guitar playing, where like I show up and I would play these chords, like, oh well, no, I'm hearing these extra notes here. Or, oh, like that bend was a little bit out of tune, or that gliss could have been a little smoother. So I got the idea. I think I got the concept there, but I think the concept was really expanded upon when I saw how much there really was to classical guitar.
Yeah. And then it's funny when you try to bring them back over to electric guitar, you feel like a king because you're
Yeah.
like, there's so many things you don't have to worry about with electric guitar, but that's another bag
Yes. Yeah.
to unpack. Um, so you when did you first get familiar with, it sounds like you and I had a very similar situation with
Yeah.
undergrad where we were at a state school.
Mhm.
The music department, I'm guessing, was probably okay, and the guitar instruction was probably pretty darn good. And but when did you meet the Hartford people? When did you meet Chris and Dick and all
Um,
of them?
so I got to know them very well through one of the Heart Guitar Festivals. And I think I went to a few, up until then, the only guitar festival I ever went to besides the Heart one was the one at the Manus School in New York City. And that one was great. I mean, that one, for anyone who hasn't gone, and hopefully if it runs this year, maybe not with however things are going on, and also granted being in New York City, that is. But that one's great because a lot of people signed up, and they get a lot of pretty good artists to play. So you have every night's a great concert of somebody that you would normally not get a chance to see because they're usually touring Europe or touring Canada or touring somewhere else. And and there was a lot of people there all at totally different levels. There was kids there that were playing circles around undergrads. There was graduate students that were playing circles around DMA students. There was adults that were just getting back into it. There was high schoolers that were amazing. There was high schoolers like me that was just kind of getting started. Um,
New York will do that to you.
yeah,
Right.
it was an awesome mix, definitely. But I think what made the Heart School then stand out so much because that was my first experience then. Then going to visit the Heart Festival, it was pure from what I got at least for my first time when it was with. I think the first time I did it was with Jason VO. Um, but was how focused it was on like the actual learning process and really seeing like how much someone like Christopher Ladd and Dick Provost really went into those things I was curious about, such as like phrasing and connecting and singing, just seeing how they worked with the students and then seeing how my own playing um, moved from then. I definitely saw there was some gaps in what I was missing in my own studies, which isn't a bad thing. I think wherever you are, there's always going to be gaps, and I think that's why you need to reach out. And I think from where I was then, though, that was where I saw my gaps, the gaps in my playing or the gaps in my learning being filled the most, I think.
Mhm.
So,
Was that the? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so I was going to kind of say it was really that kind of really acquainted me with like the Heart guitar program and the Heart School and Chris.
Right. Was that the concert where Jason swapped out the Soar for the Grand Overture? Like the first, he just came out and played the Grand Overture instead of
It might have been, from what I remember, that was when we actually we went to see him in.
that. Not that. Like years. I'm
Oh,
thinking if that was because I saw him at Heart and then we all went out to dinner.
it might have been. Let me think. What year that was 2000. I was a junior in college, I think. No, I was a sophomore in college, going into my junior
Okay.
year.
I
Um,
think it was before I did my master's. I think so.
so that was 2014, I want to say.
Oh,
Summer of 2014.
it was a long time ago.
Yeah, no.
So, um, so you eventually make your way to Hartford. You go from a state school education, and I say
Yeah,
that with a badge of honor that you
of
and I
course.
share, to a conservatory, to a true conservatory. What was that? You know, what was that transition like?
I would definitely say that it was maybe easier than for me than others. One, because by then, like I mentioned, I already knew the teachers at heart. You know what I mean? Like my audition was very, very lax in that. Like when I went there, they're like, "Chris, like, hey John, how you doing? Well, coming in, or where side you'll be next." You know what I mean? It was very friendly because it was very familiar to me. And then going into the program, I already knew how. And up until then, I also visited the school a few times too, so I already knew how they ran some of their classes. I already knew how they taught, so I had an idea of what to expect, at least the guitar program. And going into a master's degree, at least at heart, the guitar program is like most of what your degree is. You have a few other music electives here and there, but most of your degree is the guitar program. And I had an idea of that, what that was like. Um, Outside of that, though, I think going from a state school music program, I was lucky in that the state school I went to had a very strong music program just because it was so close to New York City. So I got to work with some very, very good violin teachers or flute teachers in chamber music, some very good theory teachers in the composition department. I mean, I was really lucky in that. But I think the biggest thing that was eye-opening to me wasn't necessarily the level of of what they taught, how good the teachers were, but it was more so the level of what they expected and the level of everyone else coming in there and seeing like, wow, like I was again state school, you're like, wow, I'm like the big dog here in terms of even like my theory. I was the only people that maybe that were able to do better at like ear training stuff, or like we had a class in counterpoint that could make better like a simple fugue better than I could was like the comp majors. And I go here and
Yeah.
there's people that are studying theory that would blow me and all the comp majors from my undergrad out of the water. Um,
Yeah, I left my undergrad being able to outplay anybody in the
mhm.
department. But the department was also the guitarists were dwindling. They had all
Yeah,
graduated or left the program, and then at that point, Chris put all of his eggs. Well, he left Central to go to
yeah,
Hart because that's where the kids were. That's where the students were,
yeah.
and that was a job that he deserved, and I'm glad that he got it.
Mhm.
So there was really nobody left. But even before that, I was always the you know the top dog. And then I got to Hart, and I was like on the bottom rung, barely. Like I
Yeah.
was getting my butt handed to me.
Oh yeah, totally.
So you had mentioned I want to kind of talk about what you do now.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that you have always seen yourself, a part of your identity is having one foot here, one foot there, having your hands in many different pots, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I definitely I would agree with that. It seems like you're very good at keeping a lot of things up on the surface.
Mhm.
What are you doing now other than teaching and well, just why don't you just go through the stuff that you're doing now? We'll get to the cool social media stuff when we get to it.
Cool. So, I guess what I'm doing now, you said it. I guess I am teaching. I'm trying to get fairly involved in the Suzuki guitar community now. I think that's something I definitely see, something I really want to pursue as a teacher, but also as, I guess, as weird as it sounds like, because they sound like the same thing, but as a teacher, but also as an educator, I guess, like really be well known in the Suzuki community as a good Suzuki guitar teacher, and also be a good Suzuki guitar teacher, even though that sounds like the same thing in a way. I would say there's definitely a difference.
Absolutely a difference. Absolutely.
And I guess why that is because my first teacher, Seth Hemmelhoek, who I mentioned, was one of the guys who actually founded the Suzuki guitar method back in the 80s. Um,
Oh wow.
and and the whole time I was studying with him, he would always be referencing how he has like, oh, this is a piece one of my Suzuki kids is doing. And even when I was learning with him, he would say, hey, why don't you play this A2 from Suzuki Book 7 or Book 8? And I was like, okay, cool. And then he's like, oh yeah, like one of my kids who's like 10 is playing this. And I was just like, how do you get a 10-year-old to play classical guitar that well? And he showed me some videos of his kids, and they were very good. Um, and the main thing he would always say is like, yeah, like I'm an okay teacher, but with the kids, I think it's really the method. Um, and
Okay.
I didn't really get into it until maybe 2 years ago. I finally did my first Suzuki guitar my teacher training for book one, and there was just a lot of things that I respected about like kind of the way it's taught. And there was a lot of things that I connected to the way I was taught, even at heart. And there's tons of stuff that I pull from the way I work with Chris. I worked with Chris or Dick, and I
Hmm.
put that into the way I teach Suzuki guitar in a way, some elements. So that's one big thing I'm trying to get involved in. Even today, I'm actually working on recording all the teacher parts, all the teacher accompaniment parts for book one at 3 different speeds to send to my students to play along with during the week, especially because everything's online. Um, my plan is to do that, make like a nice video for them with cues and stuff, and then send it off to the Suzuki Guitar listserv so other Suzuki Guitar teachers can hopefully use it with their students. Um,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I the year you did your book one training last summer, correct?
I think it was 2 summers ago, but yeah, not that long ago.
I remember last. I don't remember why I couldn't do it because it's always like the same like June July date. And
Uh-huh.
I remember last year I couldn't do it because my son was born, and then the
Of
year
course, yeah.
before that I was like, no, I can't do that. And then the year before that, I don't remember why I there was a conflict.
Mhm.
Um, so you're doing that. What are you doing performing and playing wise?
So performing and playing wise, I guess kind of like what you said, the whole one foot in the door. There was one point where I was trying to do as many like theater shows, musical things as possible. My logic with that kind of was like, well, I'll have more time to practice the stuff I want to do if I'm not teaching as much, and I just do these shows to kind of make money. And those all got canceled, obviously, because of the whole virus thing. And in a way, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise. At least that part for me was. Because I was like, you know what, like I don't know how much I really want to do these. I want to spend my
Mhm.
time just playing classical guitar and getting as good as I can get with that. And that really kind of shone a light of meaning like if those shows didn't work out and anything if I had some classical guitar concerts, those wouldn't have worked out. But knowing that both those wouldn't have worked out, which one would I have done anyway was kind of my thought process.
Right.
And it was obviously the classical stuff. Um, so performing wise right now, I mean I used to play tons of restaurant gigs, I used to play tons of weddings with classical guitar. That was fun. I probably still would in a way, but right now my goal is currently to work up a new concert program and hopefully concertize with that in the fall or maybe the spring next year. My concert program now is actually very much consisted of Suzuki repertoire, mostly the Book 9 stuff. For classical guitarists, that would be Recuerdos de la Alhambra, Capriccio Rabe, Asturias, and the Solo Mozart variations. Those are the four big pieces in Book 9. And,
The whole
and
score is in there.
mhm.
The whole
And I'm
piece.
mhm. And I'm doing that um for the program primarily because I want to start hopefully trying to play and get like I said more well known in the Suzuki guitar community and hopefully do concerts for my students or at different Suzuki schools. And one of the things my students love is whenever I pick up their guitar, I'm like, oh, let me play a book 9 piece on your guitar, and they're
Right.
like, wow, that was so cool! I can't wait till I get to book 9. So I'm like, well, why not just have a program that's all book 9 stuff, especially if I'm playing to a lot of Suzuki kids. So, and it also coincidentally lines up with audition stuff too. To be certified to get into Book 9, you have to play the Book 9 pieces. So it's kind of a win-win for me.
I did not know. I think we're gonna have to do a whole episode on Suzuki guitar sometime
That would be
because
awesome.
I'm quite ignorant to this. Um, so you're doing that. You're working on current program. Obviously, unless you're somebody who is has so much fame and clout that you can start streaming and getting money, which those people probably don't. I mean, I doubt Eminem needs to or Lady Gaga really needs the money right now.
No.
Unless you're one of those people, you're probably not making too much for performing right now. So you're finding time to work on your craft, which I think is awesome. Um, and then here comes the social media account that started off as like a way to create humor. So I was
Yeah.
looking at this today. I guess let's just start. I'm not gonna try to make it sound fancy. You have an Instagram account called For the Classical Guitarist.
Hmm.
It's on the surface, it's like a jokey meme page.
In a way, yeah, totally.
And that's definitely how it started. But now there's stuff in there that's extremely informative. It's for the classical guitarist.
Yes.
So you have interviews with some of the big social media people,
Mhm.
Hannah Murphy, Phil Gold. Did you do Phil?
I did not. I'm going to do him. I am planning to do a second season, a round of
Sure.
like interviews. And definitely with that, I'm planning to do one with Phil Goldenberg, and a few other people that I know that I think would have different interesting points of view on music and on
Right.
guitar.
One of the cool things is that you now, and I think this was maybe somewhat intentional with your idea of being a little bit of everywhere at once, is once you have gathered everybody's, I think this is a great thing, gathered everybody's attention with like the funny stuff, then you can show them the stuff that's really cool. And because they already know that they're familiar with you, they can trust you. They say, "Oh, I am going to watch this thing with Fraser
Yeah,
Hardross or with Sarah Badlisi, or I'm gonna read out his thing about tremolo on tremolo on tremolo
yeah.
or whatever." What is your well? How did that start? And what's your path that you're currently taking with it?
So I guess how it started, there's two things that really come to mind. Thing number one is my friend who I went to one of my friends who I went to high school with. He was another guitarist, singer guy that was playing in bands, and he really liked like pop punk music bands like Blink-182, Green Day, Simple Plan, and so on. And he had a pop punk band that was okay. It wasn't bad. It was just if I showed it to anybody that didn't know who it was, they would be like, "Oh yeah, this is just your every other day average slash maybe slightly mediocre high school pop punk band. Not bad, but there's nothing really special about it. So why would I listen to this when I could listen to, like I said, the other bands I listed?" And he ended up going to school for music business at Oneonta. Did fairly well. I think he has like a small time job now working for a record label. designing like logos and stuff for different bands and stuff or artists. And I think somewhere around 2016, maybe 2017, he made an Instagram account called the Pop Punker, right? Or Punker for short. And it was pretty much just him uploading memes about pop punk humor, whether it was making fun of a song by The Killers, a song by Blink-182, a song by Good Charlotte, whoever it is. And he was making these memes, and the whole idea what it shows like it showed like the pop punk community how people that listen to that music will see the joke and get that, and that kind of got me thinking about memes more, as weird as that sounds, because up until maybe 2017, like my thought of memes was just like they're kind of like comical things that can be maybe slightly offensive, slightly funny, whatever they are, right? Whatever type of meme you like. Um, and my realization to memes then, as it sounds so weird to talk about memes like in a serious context, but it
It really
is like
does.
is
I'm
that
like, dude, you're closing in on 30. You gotta.
no, but no, it sounds really weird. But the thing with what makes memes so interesting to me is that it really is like you want to, if you don't get the joke, you either want to figure out the joke, and if you get the joke, you like being in the crowd. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what made the pop punk one so
Absolutely.
familiar because it was only other people that like pop punk that would get the joke. If I showed to my mom a joke about like Mr. Brightside about the Killers, she wouldn't laugh, even if it was the funniest thing ever. She'd be like, "Oh, okay, good, I guess. I don't get it." But when I showed it to somebody who's in that circle, they're like, "Oh, this is so funny. Oh, you like pop punk too? Oh, cool. You gotta check out this." And then that's a kind of a community centered around this thing through memes. And the thing with memes is that's great with them is that they're so accessible. I mean, they're photos with minimal text. Um, and like, what's gonna draw someone in more? A photo of so the Killers one I'm thinking of is there's a picture of a dog outside of a cage, and it just says like I'm doing just fine up top, and it's a dog out of the cage, so coming out of my cage, I'm doing just fine. And what's going to be funnier, a text describing that like joke, like oh imagine if there's a dog out of his cage, or just a photo of a dog outside of his cage with the text and I'm doing just fine below it. And
It's definitely a way to grab people's attention
it is,
and then make them think about what just happened.
it
And
is.
I don't mean that in a crass way. You're right. When you think about it, there's something very accessible to it, and especially the way that we view social media and the way that we use social media, which is like pretty quick, right? We're like we're on this post, we go to this post, we go to this post. We're either highly invested in it or we move on, and so delivering something in that kind of bite-sized uh, capsule is, or what I don't know. You don't really bite capsules,
Yeah, yeah.
but delivering something like that, I think is interesting.
Yeah, well, it totally is. And then, so basically, to kind of speed up the story though. Basically, so his page started doing very well. I think I checked it maybe 2017 had like 60,000 followers, and today it has like 130,000 followers or something. And somewhere probably around the 80,000 mark of him doing this, he was people were always messaging him being like, "Oh, do you have a band? Do you do anything?" Because there was like, "Who is this guy? Who is this guy that runs the Pop Punker page?" And he was like, "Well, I don't have a band anymore, but I used to. I'll start releasing some songs of mine." And he released the exact same song that was in high school, the same one that I said was maybe the slightly mediocre pop punk band. And within like a week, it was like one of the top pop punk hits on Spotify. It was added to Spotify playlists with bands like Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, Green Day, whatever. And and then he's starting to get all these like checks from Spotify then because people love his music. And if you go on YouTube and look at the songs, all the comments are like, "This is the best punk song ever." And again, it's no different than what was there before. And what I realized is because they liked him, they liked the pop punker. They didn't like my friend. His name is Ben. They didn't like Ben as well. They didn't like Ben. They liked the pop punker, or they liked punker. And because they like punker, anything punker says, whether it's his music, someone else's music, is going to have some weight to it. And that got me thinking in terms of, well, why isn't there anything like that for classical guitar? I mean, we're an equally, I would say, as like we equally have our own inside jokes within our own community, whether it's making fun
Did you see the Oscar Gilia one today?
I did, yeah.
That is funny.
I did see that. And the thing is, the one before that was a post about playing by the page memes for classical guitarists. The one that it was one that was like playing for Renee Esquerdo, and like my first comment without even looking at any of the comments was like, you guys haven't played for Oscar yet. And I open the comments and I see there's like one or two other comments already saying that. And it shows the whole idea of the sense of community. I mean, like we get these
Right.
jokes. And
Yeah.
like I showed my mom it, she wouldn't care.
Right.
But other classical guitarists like that. They like feeling in on the joke. Um,
Especially because we're part of a community that is, I mean, we're on the outside of everything. I
mhm.
mean, if you, and I'm not saying poor us. I mean, we're very privileged to be able to spend the amount of money that we did on our
Oh yeah.
education. But in terms of like respect in the conservatory, they don't really respect us
Mhm.
because we can't really do too much. Uh, and then, you know, oh, I play guitar. Oh, that's so cool. What kind of guitar do you play? Classical guitar. Oh, okay, so like
Yeah.
Beethoven, and then the conversation
Yeah.
ends. So it's like this thing that people don't understand, and it's you're right. We invest so much time and money and energy and years of our life to studying this stuff, and it's funny to be able to geek out with those kinds of people. We talk a lot about. I mentioned to you a lot about the similarity in like the watch collecting community.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, a couple of years ago, these watch memes accounts started popping up, and some of them are just like kind of what you do, like funny inside joke memes. Some of them take stabs at like the establishments of
Yeah.
like the infrastructure of watch collecting, and yeah, you're right. On the surface, it's like yeah, who cares? But it means something to people that get it. So you have this account. It's I think around 5,000 followers right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're not going to get any from this because nobody's going to watch this other than my mom. But what what are you starting to do with it now? What are you seeing its potential to not just have the followers because the followers whatever, but it's the voice in the community. What are you seeing that's happening because of this?
I think I'm getting a lot more interest in my opinion, as weird as it sounds, and this isn't in a conceited way. My opinion is getting much more validated than it would be. I would say without it. I mean, I didn't know this Instagram account for a few years. I would post videos of me playing. I would post videos from concerts, from recitals, and they would get some likes. People would be like, "Wow, nice job. That was good." No one was ever negative. Um, but I wasn't getting messages that were like, "Wow, you're really good. What are your thoughts on this?" You know what I mean? And with this account now almost every day I get at least a message being like, "Hey, look at me doing this," or like I'll get a tag of someone tagging, even like I think it's Mendez or Ellie Fisk's wife though. Like she even tagged me in like a post that she was doing, and I think she did it accidentally. But I messaged her back, and I was like, "Thanks for the tag," and she was just like, "You're welcome." And like, there's these ins that I wouldn't have I don't think um, without it. So I think now my challenge that I'm trying to figure out with this whole thing though is like how do I take this thing that's kind of now like still like a meme page, humor page, and turn it into something more serious, but also make them like me. And that's where I've really been invested. Kind of part two of which is what motivated me a lot is YouTubers. As I mentioned to you before, I follow almost all the big electric slash contemporary music YouTubers. And oddly enough, I realized that's something that a lot of musicians don't do. I mean, a few people, probably a lot of people know Adam Neely, but not many people follow like Mary Spender or Samurai Guitarist. And
Samurai Guitarist is no
he's a
joke.
cool guy.
He's really
Yeah.
good. Who was the what was the second video that you posted with the bebop
You
solo?
know, that one I actually don't know. I saw that video a while ago because the other thing I do, especially with my page now, is I really try to follow internet trends, like to see things that are going on and see what other people are talking about. You know what I mean? Like with the
I'm gonna pull
whole
it up. I'm gonna pull it up right now.
a good example is like the whole Ed Sheeran like lawsuit case where he was getting sued by Marvin Gaye. As soon as I dropped, I followed like I watched every major YouTuber videos on that thoughts on that. Same with the Nick Jonas one. That's why when you posted that, I was like, oh, I could send him these two videos. Like I knew
Yeah.
exactly which one to send you. And my other thought was like, well, why aren't there any YouTubers for the classical guitar? At least in the same way there are, they are. Like, there's tons of YouTube channels that are about like, oh, here's how you do this technique, or here's like my thoughts on this book or this edition. But there's no like fun like modernized content for classical guitar on YouTube. And my question still is why not? I still don't know the answer to that. But another thinking is, well, if there's not, like, why don't I make it? And hopefully, I'll get in the people that like the kind of stuff I do on Instagram, but now on YouTube is my
Yeah.
is my new goal.
Hold on. We're gonna watch this really quick. You said before, um, You said before that there was somebody that you had met in your crossings that said they didn't really see the point of jazz, or just something of that extent.
Yes.
That's kind of loud. Hold on, let me turn it down a little bit. I feel like if you need to understand why you should be interested in jazz, it should be this video. Because I was like, what is this guy gonna do, right?
Like, yeah, yeah, the first time I saw that, I thought that was great. And there was
It's so
actually
good too.
there's one more of those I was gonna send you. Actually, I'll send it to you later tonight. It's a little bit more. It's a little more slightly immature. It's by YouTuber Stevie T. I don't know if you
Okay,
see. He's an insane like shred metal guitarist, but
we're gonna watch the next select. I like the next select too.
yeah, no, it's great. And and that's the thing is like he's clearly making fun of like pop culture. He's making fun of jazz in a way.
Right.
Um, and like where's the classical guitar in that? You know what I mean? It's been
Yeah.
around longer. I mean, it definitely could. It definitely could be in there. I think part of why people don't like classical guitar or they don't really know about it is because there isn't anything out there for people that don't really play classical guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
am I
yeah.
am I right in saying, because you've said a lot about your personal goals with the page of like,
Mhm.
I want to get to I want to be able to reach more people. I want
Yeah.
people to like me for what I have to offer. But what is then the duty that you have to classical guitar? What do you want to share? Is it stuff for the classical guitarist, or is it stuff to grab people that would say, "Oh, those are the weird guys with the long fingernails," to, "Oh, this is really pretty music. I didn't know that there was such a, like Julia Florida, right?
Mhm.
Is like, oh, one of the pieces that you could play for somebody that's never heard classical guitar and they might fall in love with it, or the Cathedral,
Mhm.
or you know, Leanda or something like that. So are you, I guess my question is, do you feel like you want to be grabbing people outside of that realm, or just sort of service the community that's already there, or both?
I think it's definitely the second thing you said. It's definitely grabbing people from outside the realm. And my thought of that is back to the YouTubers because it really comes down to who I guess I look up to as content creators and like what are they doing. And as I mentioned, most musicians don't follow many music YouTubers. Like a lot of people know like two set violin and stuff, but not many people follow like a lot the more direct educational ones in a way. And however, these guys have like close to 1 million subscribers on the YouTube channels, and a company like Tonebase has like 1,000. You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen? You know what I mean? How does a company have less than one person?
Why do you think
When you
that
think,
is?
and well, my thinking is because people like a person. You know what I mean? As weird that sounds very obvious and also kind of weird, but it's also super true. Um, but but if you look at Tonebase's audience, people that subscribe to Tonebase, I'm almost 100% sure that every single one of them is a classical guitarist, if not somebody who is maybe really trying to get motivated into classical guitar. If you look at the, if you look at the subscriber base of a YouTuber like someone like Music is Win,
Hmm.
most of them are probably not professional guitarists. They're people that maybe play one or two chords, maybe dream one day of being able to play the Freebird solo, but just aren't there yet, and they maybe never will. Maybe guitar isn't a priority of their life, but it's fun to have a community of guitarists that again can laugh the same jokes, can learn the same things, can be like, oh, I never knew that. That's cool. I'll go home and practice now. Where a company like Tonebase is really for professional classical guitarists that are trying to, or aspiring professional classical guitarists, that is.
Is that then the does the fact that somebody like Tonebase, or
Mhm.
somebody like Adam Neely,
Uh-huh.
is that discrepancy because of the nature of the content? Meaning, if I want to create a space where you can study classical guitar,
Mhm.
am I doomed to to fight an uphill battle more so than having the advantage if I'm just going to say this is Ben's guitar page and I'm going to do stuff to grab your attention. So I guess the question that I'm asking is that is that discrepancy in followers sort of built into the infrastructure of the way that we view music?
I think it's built in. I think it's not necessarily the way we built that we view music. I think it's the way we view things in general. Um, and that's what I think it really is. Like, yeah, you obviously want to have content that's good, content that people like, but it's really how that content is presented, which is, I think, which is what it is. Um, for example, if you look at any of the tone-based videos, even if it's with someone great, it'll be like some guy just probably sitting in a very nice, very like blank back wall room, right? Maybe with some paintings, something nice maybe. And he'll have his guitar and he'll be like, "Hey guys, today we're going to be learning how to do blank. So first thing we want to do is this." And like the information he might be saying great, maybe he might be saying it in a very, very well structured, very thought out, very clear way. But unless if you're like dedicated to learn that thing, whatever that thing is, whether it's tremolo, building scale speed, arpeggios, whatever it is, um, why would you want to spend your time maybe the few time you have to play guitar watching that when um when there's also now YouTubers like let's say with electric guitar that they'll come in and it'll be like something like fun like CBT who has like a fun desk behind his thing with all these other weird gizmos and he's like making jokes about he's making pop culture references but he's also teaching you about I don't know what gent is for example he's teaching you about like or even like music theory. Like Adam Neely does tons of videos on like weird rhythms, like polyrhythms, for example. But he does them in a much more interesting way, as opposed to
Right.
just being like, "Hey guys, I'm going to teach you about how to do a 7/11 polyrhythm." He actually breaks it down, has cool animations. He does it outside of 7/11. He like actually maps it out really well, and it really is how the content is presented. I think that's just because the modern age. Like if you look at all of their followers, they're all in their age range. I want to say from 16 to like 38, from what I've gathered from most of them. And they've said
So,
it in
so,
interviews.
so
Yeah,
that's funny that because I have no doubt that some of these people can really play. Like, I have no
yeah,
problem saying this because I'm never gonna this is never gonna blow up. I don't think.
yeah, yeah,
But like Rick Beato, he's
yeah,
a fine player.
hmm
I can't stand his videos. Like,
yeah,
just because that's not what I want to do. I don't want to watch the top 10 coolest color picks, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But then when I saw him play like the Larry Carlton solo from
Mhm.
Steely Dan's Kid Charlemagne, I was like, that's pretty good. Yeah, he's a good player. So I guess the thing is like these people, they amass these followers, and then it's almost like they trick you, and that's a very cynical way. And I'm sure they don't see it like that. I'm sure they're
Mhm.
saying like, I have now I can do the stuff that I really want to do,
Yeah,
because you know, I'm sure the top 10 videos are fun, but to geek out over a polyrhythm is probably that's a more of a fun video. So if I'm the consumer and I'm looking on YouTube,
hmm
then you know, I guess the way that you would find a YouTube follower is something that's going to grab their attention
yeah,
or something that they're looking for. But I would say it's probably more of the former because, like, if I'm looking up a walkthrough on Dark Souls and I get the information that I want,
hmm
I'm not going to click subscribe unless that person brings me in with like humor,
exactly.
really good
Yeah,
information, really good production quality, things that I think I'm going to need for the future. I'll hit
yeah,
subscribe. So if I'm a guitar player or if I'm an amateur guitar player or somebody that you know has a guitar hanging up on my wall and never touches it, like this
hmm
beautiful guitar,
hmm
I might subscribe to one of those guys that has the funky desk
yeah,
and the funny voice. And then when he does the polyrhythm video, I might be like, oh, okay, watch a few minutes of it and then scroll on past it.
yeah.
I was just going through I guess, a personal
Yeah.
journey right there with
Well,
that.
no, no, that's totally good. And the thing is, like, I mean, again, like I said, a lot of those things, like for someone like you or someone like me, like a lot of these things we know, obviously. So it's like kind of like, well, and like my big thing is like, if there was a classical guitar YouTuber that was talking about like tremolo, they had like, all these funny things, and then they did a video about tremolo technique. Me as a classical guitarist, who am I gonna want to watch them or like Scott Tennant talk about tremolo? You know what I mean? Like. as a classical guitarist, I'm obviously going to pick Scott Tennant. But if I don't really know a whole lot about classical guitar and I see, oh, this guy, I like a few of his videos. He has a few funny videos, and he's talking about this technique called tremolo. Huh, what's that? And oh, here's this older looking bald guy talking about tremolo. I don't know who that is, but I've seen this guy's videos before. I'll watch that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to knowing your audience. Um,
Meanwhile, he's got like the best tremolo on the planet.
Well, and that's exactly what it is, though. The thing is, we wouldn't know. And the thing is, though, the guy that talks with those videos, I'm sure if they know what they're doing, they'll be like, oh, yeah, if you want to see some really good tremolo, definitely check out Scott Tennant, or check out
Sure.
David Russell, or John Williams, or whoever. And,
Or Scott
um,
Tennant twice.
yeah, and they'll probably even, like, stress Scott Tennant.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're already there for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like maybe if you're really invested, maybe like, wow, I trust this guy and he says to check out Scott Tennant, let me find who that is. That's awesome. I mean, that's probably hopefully why that person's doing what they're doing. But
So then, is this a question then
yeah.
of pop culture? Is this just a question of is this because the way that we're talking about it makes me think like this is just an issue that has always existed and will always exist. If you're trying to persuade somebody to see something the way you see it, but the only reason that you see it
Hmm.
is because you've spent years studying it. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the conversation about how when we both started, well, you said this and I agree. You start classical guitar and you're like, yeah, I get it, but
Hmm.
you don't get it. Oh, okay, well, I get it
Yeah.
now. No, you still don't get it. And
Hmm.
2 years after my master's degree, there's things I'm thinking about being like, oh, I think I get that now. So is it just a question of we're always going to be on the outside uh, trying to get people to let us in or bring them out there with us? I just wonder if that's just a human nature thing.
I think it totally is, and I think that's why. I mean, obviously, there's just a lot more electric guitarists than there are classical guitarists, and there's definitely a lot more amateur electric guitarists than there are amateur classical guitarists. But I think the reason why is because what many people see is there isn't any space to be an amateur classical guitarist. It's kind of like, oh, you play classical guitar, but you're not that great. Okay, well, I don't want anything to do with you. You know what I mean? And with the electric guitar community, you could be playing the same power chords, playing the same pentatonic scale, and you could find a bunch of people that are equally that and are willing to have a good time with just that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I definitely feel that way from the inside of the classical guitar circle, but I'm not sure. What do you how when you said that about how if you're not good, people don't want anything to do with you? I feel like that might not be true when it comes to fans, because
yeah,
I've seen some people freak out over some really terrible
yeah.
classical guitar players.
I don't know if it's so much as it has to do with fans. For me, I think it has to do with them. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the big thing. Is it really is like, do people like you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is it's weird. That's kind of thing I've been telling people a lot lately. What I'm trying to do with my page is I want people to like me, as weird as it sounds. And I don't mean that in like a sad way. Like I just want everyone to like me. I mean that in like a they need to know me enough to have an opinion on me at all. I mean, and
Yeah.
and I think that's totally it. I think it is the same thing with pop culture too. For example, there's tons of people who are not great singers that are famous for being singers because people like them. They care with their life. You know what I mean? And I think being beyond being a celebrity, being like a YouTube celebrity, or being just like a well, I guess what's known now in the YouTube or Instagram community, if you're big, is known as an influencer. Is people feel very connected to you. I mean, they want to know what you're doing. They want to know what your dog ate that day. Even you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they care because you're a friend to them. You're a teacher to them if you're on like an educational type page. Um, you're a mentor to them. You're a celebrity to them, but it's a much more personal connection than just some celebrity that you maybe idolize because they're so good at guitar. I mean, you might respect them for being good at guitar, but that's not why you keep up with their content. You know what I mean? You're not like I don't subscribe to I don't know, music is win because he's the best electric guitar player in the world. I mean, is he very good? Yeah, he's definitely very, very good. Um, but personally, for me, if I want, it's like, I don't really play electric guitar anymore. So if I wanted to learn maybe how to get better at sweeping, for example, who am I going to watch a video with a guy that's like one of the best shred gods out there that I maybe know is famous, but I don't really know a whole lot about them. Or oh, here's my friend Tyler from Music Is Win talking about how to get started at sweep picking. You know what I mean?
As a non guitarist, you're
As a
talking about.
non-electric guitarist, I would probably pick that.
Yeah.
As a classical guitarist, if there was the equivalent of that for a classical guitar, or watching a video on like John Williams talking about scales, of course, most professional or aspiring professional classical guitarists are going to geek out over John Williams talking about how he does scales so
Sure.
fast.
Yeah.
But but again, I think it really is finding the niche, finding your market for who do you want to appeal to. And I think that my big thing to kind of go back to what you asked about, like where am I hoping to go with it is I want to I want to be, I guess, like the people that don't really know anything about classical guitar. And if some great classical guitarist that's someone in my same field, we could say like same level in terms, I guess like a colleague, we could say, thinks like, oh, your videos are stupid, and you know what I mean, like, oh, you're talking about that technique wrong, or oh, you're talking about how to do tremolo, but your tremolo isn't that good. It's kind of like, well, great, I wasn't trying to make you happy, you know what I mean? I was trying to introduce the concept of tremolo to somebody who's maybe never touched a classical guitar before and used their fingers as picks. You know what I mean? And like, and if I get like some respect from the classical guitar community, being like, wow, this person is a pretty good classical guitarist and he posts good videos, great. But that's not really my goal. You know what I mean?
And
So
he
if
got a
somebody,
tag from Elliot Fisk's wife.
yeah, and I got tagged from Ali Fisk's wife. You know what I mean? Um, like if and exactly. So if they like my stuff, they think, "Wow, this guy plays really well." Awesome. If they hate it and they think I'm terrible, and they're like, "Oh, why should we listen to you? You're no better than so and so." I'm like, "Well,
Well, I
great."
think I think the real I think because classical guitar has such a high threshold, like the entry price is so
Mhm.
high, meaning you have to be good or have a lot of study
Yeah.
to really be able to formulate an opinion. I think the real ones recognize other real ones, and so I can't imagine people not having some sort of takeaway. It's sort of like who's that guy from Virginia, the bald guy, the white guy,
Oh, Sean Beavers.
and so he does. Does is he still doing the Facebook and Twitter like constant lessons of many things?
I don't think he is anymore. I really liked his lessons.
Yeah,
He's a very, very nice guy.
very nice
Has
guy.
very good information on like music, business and music career building stuff. Very cool guy.
So like
Um,
your I would say that your stuff is very similar to or let me put it this way. If you're talking about the education and the humor side,
yeah.
I feel like you have the humor side and are starting to build like his model, but just
Yes.
in slowly incorporating more education uh, instead of just all humor.
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it, definitely. And yeah, I think kind of you said that like the entry point to classical guitar is so high, and for you to really be in on it, I think as weird as it sounds, it's almost like I'm trying to lower the entry point. Not necessarily to lower the entry point in terms of like, oh well, if you're not, you can be not good and still be considered a classical guitarist, but lower it in the way
You're trying to make it
that
more accessible for people. I
yeah,
think that's
exactly make it more accessible. Lower it in the way that it's okay to only play a piece like the Lagrimal, but play it very well. You know what I mean? Kind
right.
of the same way with electric guitars. Like, yeah, if you only know basic bar chords and you can't shred and you can't do electric guitar scales at 120 16th notes, or 120 to the quarter in 16th notes, it's kind of like, well, okay, cool. Nobody asks you to. You know what I mean, I think,
Right.
um, and I think the cool thing with classical guitar and kind of what you said with the whole like when what classical guitar kind of is it's like totally, in my opinion at least, and from what I've talked to a few other guitarists about, is it's totally in the zone because it's still guitar. You know what I mean? Like I think that's one thing a lot of classical guitarists and guitar players kind of forget is it's still a guitar. Yeah, it's a different technique. Yeah, there's different music played on it, but at the same time too, it's still a guitar. The guitar as a whole is still probably the most universally played instrument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it's strumming chords or whether it's shredding Van Halen licks or whether it's playing classical guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's it's still the guitar. I think that's the thing that I think people either force a barrier around classical guitar, like, oh well, no, we're better than this, or oh no, that's not cool enough for us. Whatever side you go on, and I think it really is kind of burning down that barrier on there.
I find there's a couple things that you mentioned that I think are interesting. I find that the negativity
Hmm.
is easy for me. It has been very easy to avoid,
Hmm.
unless it was coming from me, but that required a sort of an internal check. But the negativity and like sort of the ego measuring contest
Hmm.
of those guitarists who say, how's your speed, how's your tremolo, how's
Yeah,
this and that. I feel like that's very easy to avoid.
totally. Yeah.
And then the second thing I was thinking is, you said if you just want to play Lagrima, why can't that be respected? And I was thinking, what if more people knew what Lagrima was? Every time I put on, I don't know, I put on this, the one of the Brahms piano
Hmm.
quintets, and it has like it's G minor, and it has this really cool intro. It's I'll find it later, and I'll put it on, and my wife will be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go. This is gonna put me to sleep."
Hmm.
And like, I can't get mad at that. Why wouldn't she say something like that? Because
Yeah.
she hasn't been like, and then the assumption is you have to come from this really artsy fartsy
Hmm.
sophisticated background to be able to appreciate something like that. So I think when you say I'm lowering the bar, I hear that as you're saying, come all ye, enjoy the humor, enjoy me, enjoy this thing of classical guitar, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's really what it's been at lately too, and to kind of to go off of that too, like you said um, with like you putting on like one of the Brahms quartets or quintets, right? With that, it's like yeah, it's like why wouldn't they say that? You know what I mean, how much have they experienced classical music to really understand that? You know what I mean? Up until even like honestly, up for myself, even up until like 3 or 4 years ago, if I heard like classical like string quartets, I would be like, oh well, okay, cool, whatever, you know what I mean? And but one thing I would say about the guitar, what's so cool is there's tons of times that for fun I would play classical guitar at open mics, and obviously there pretty much everyone there, maybe minus 1 or 2 people, play guitar. Everyone at least playing is a singer songwriter, and so everyone already has the connection to the guitar. And I would go up and play pieces like Sunburst, things that I knew were fun, and every single guitarist in the room would be like, "Wow, that was the coolest thing I've ever heard. How'd you do that?" You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I do know.
one,
Yeah, it's
and you know what I mean? And one Sunburst is a cool piece, but it's not the hardest piece in the world. I didn't play it the best in the world. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
and like, and with those things still being put on the table, everyone was still like, "Whoa, that was the coolest thing I've ever heard. How'd you do that?" You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and I think that's what classical guitar is. I think that's where it can be, and I think it's getting it to out there to people that aren't classical guitarists.
I would say Hannah
Hmm.
probably has a page where that's very accessible
Yes.
because all of her videos are well produced. Her guitars
Yeah.
sound good, and she plays, for the most part, music that is very accessible. If you
Yes.
like what you're seeing in the video and you like how
Hmm.
it sounds, then why wouldn't you go along and subscribe with the rest of the 100,000 people that she's got? I
Exactly.
don't say that in a sarcastic way at all. I mean, it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
And
And then
there's
I
other channels too. Like I don't know if you follow either Sam Griffin Guitar or Beyond the Guitar. Beyond the
think I
Guitar does
follow Beyond the Guitar.
so
Yeah.
Beyond the Guitar does a lot of like movie arrangements. Movies and video game arrangements, whether it's Disney,
Oh, on
Zelda,
on Instagram. Yeah, if I
Final
yeah,
Fantasy,
a lot of
um,
video game stuff. Yeah, 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 yeah.
and again like there's that connection. I mean, he's making the connection for you of like, hey, you guys like the music from Zelda. I mean, definitely a great soundtrack, whatever Zelda one you play. And he's like, here's the music in a way you haven't heard it. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh wow, that was really cool. I didn't know that the guitar could do that. I wonder what more of this would sound like. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where it is. I mean, it's bringing you into the realm of what the classical guitar is because you have the common denominator. And I think why people don't is just because there's nothing that connects them to. So for me, I guess the target is humor. You know what I mean? It's things that are interesting or intriguing, right? Um, I think everyone has their own angle. I think one thing that also really got me started was I read an interview with Diodario of Evan Toucher, and he did an interview on like Instagram and kind of what it was, and what got me thinking is he said like, what do you have? What are you going to offer that no one else is offering? Because you know what I mean. If I made another guitar page and it was just videos of me playing, it's kind of like, okay, well, cool. Like, why would I watch you play when I can? How would I even find you playing when there's 20 other videos of other people playing the exact same thing, better or
Right.
worse? I don't know, but how am I even gonna find your page?
Right.
So I think it really is figuring out what you're gonna offer and what that common denominator that people are gonna be in, whether it's the music you're playing, whether it's how you're presenting the music, right? Whether it's how you're titling your video, how your what the thumbnail of your video is. Um, Something that whether you're I guess whether you're aiming in the right place or not, something that people are going to see and be like, oh, I think I can have an idea what this is. Let's see what this is all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're doing a good job of that, and you're connecting. I think both people that are already inside that community and some people that are outside of that community that are being brought in slowly, and I
Mhm.
think that that's wonderful. Before we go, is there
Yeah.
anything that you want to promote? We'll have a link, a list of links at the bottom in the comments wherever this is on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, so that people can get to your stuff. But is there anything that you want to promote right now?
Um, I don't think so. I guess definitely if you guys don't already check my page on Instagram, primarily that's where it's at, the page for the classical guitarist. Check us out on YouTube as well. There are going to be more videos coming out very soon. Um, Humor, informative, etc. Mixture of them. And definitely check us out on Facebook to kind of see all the stuff we're doing. Everything that is just the title for the classical guitarist.
A mixture of humor, information, and now y'all got the scoop on the curator and mastermind behind the whole project.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for joining. I'm going to press the stop recording button.
All right, sounds great. I'll talk to you later.